guys, welcome back to another Swift tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can build a Instagram feed similar table view. So if we open up what we're going to build, it's this table view with these posts in it. So we have a image view for the user's profile picture, their username, the main image itself, and then down below it, we have our action buttons to like, comment, and share, as well as a label which shows the number of likes. So the purpose of this video is definitely not to, build beautiful design, as where this table view and this this feed is not pretty by any means, but it's more so to help you understand the mechanics of putting together these custom cells. So with that being said, drop a like down below, subscribe if you're new, get Xcode ready to go, and let's get into it. So as always, we're going to get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with a single view application, and we'll title this project Instagram feed. And let's save this on our desktop, expand our Xcode window, and start talking about the various components we're going to need to get this feed up and running. So I've actually taken the liberty of grabbing some images we're going to use in the app from Google Images, as well as the screenshot of the Instagram feed, albeit this is a bit of an older version of it, but either way, it's pretty similar. So taking a look at the screenshot on the left here, we can see that we have an image up here for the profile picture of the poster, their username, this icon, the image itself, and then below the image, we have essentially four things. So we have these three kind of call to action buttons to like, comment, and send, as well as this label which shows the number of likes. So we need to basically create a table view cell that can handle each of these tasks. So we're going to take a look at how we can do this and what part of a table view cell each of these components fits into. Before we do that, let's actually go to our Viewcontroller and set up a very basic table view with an outlet. So as always, let's create an IB outlet. It's going to have a var of a table, and we're going to do a UI table view. Let's assign this table's delegate and data source to self. Let's make sure to bring on those delegate and data sources in. So we want table view delegate and UI table view data source. Let's implement a few functions for the delegate and data source. So we want firstly number of sections, number of sections will return 1. We want number of rows in section. Let's return 0 for now. And we're going to create an array that we're going to get data from, and that's the value we're going to use there in just a moment. We're going to use cell for row at index path. And we need to return a cell in here, which we'll do in a second. And we also need to have the function did select row at index path, which gets called when the user taps on a cell. So as mentioned, right now we're just returning 0 here, but we need to create an array of, let's say, posts, and let's just say it's an array of strings for now, and we want to return the number of posts here. Number of sections, actually we want 1, not 0. Which is the default. Let's see, what else do we need? For this function, which is giving us an error, let's get rid of my antivirus pop-up. This is giving us an error over here because we need to be returning a cell. And we're going to create a custom cell, but before we do that, for now, to get this error to go away, let's just return a UI table view cell. If you hit Command B after changing to a simulator, your app should successfully build. And give it a second, hit Command R, and we should have our app building now. Now it's going to crash because we haven't connected this outlet to something in the storyboard yet. So before it crashes like that, let's hit stop up here, go to our storyboard, whoops, go to our storyboard and drag a table view in and connect it to our outlet. So let's come up here, look for a UI table view, drag it in, and let's also connect it to our outlet like so. Let's apply some constraints to this so this table takes up the full screen width and height. So hit this and pin it 0 to each side of the screen, which will essentially give it the entire size of the screen. We also want to have a title bar up here per this image, which shows the Instagram logo. So we need to nest this view controller into a navigation controller. So let's select this controller, come up here to your toolbar, hit editor, and we want embed in navigation controller, whoops, not tab bar controller. Hit Command Z to undo that if you ever make that mistake, but again, editor, and embed in navigation controller. We now have this bar up here, and we want to put a image in here. So let's come up here and look for an image view and drag this in like so. Let's see, did that drop in? I don't think it did. Let's see, we've got our table and the bar does not have it in there. So let's just type in Instagram for now, and we'll deal with getting the image in there in just a second. So now let's hit Command R, which will build and run our app into our simulator. And we shouldn't be crashing, but we're gonna have an empty table view, which is essentially just this blank app that you see. So now we need to create a cell that's going to basically show our content. So the way that I would approach this is our cell has a fixed kind of header up here, which is this username label and username image view and this like button here. We have this big image, which is the main content. And then at the bottom of the cell, we have a fixed height for this button tray, as I guess would call it, as well as this label that shows the number of likes. As you're aware, Instagram now allows different sized images, so the height of this image is dynamic. For the purposes of this video, we're going to stick with a static height image, in that they are square images. I've actually put some square images on my desktop here that we're going to drag in for the purposes of this video. So I just wanted to call that out. So with that being said, let's right click this and create a new file for our table view cell. So it's going to be a subclass of a UI table view cell. Make sure you check this box to also create a XIB file. And let's call this post table view cell. Now, first things first, we need to put some code in here. So the first thing we want to add after deleting these comments that Xcode gives us is a static property for our identifier for the cell. And what I like to do is just use the same name as the cell itself. Makes your life easier. We also need a static function, which I like to call a nib, which returns a UI nib. And the purposes of this function is when we want to use this cell with our table view, we need to register it. And it's easy to register if we create this kind of convenience function. The nib name is the same name as your cell class. Bundle you can pass in nil. And that's the basic setup we need there. We also need a couple of outlets on this cell. So as I mentioned, and also taking a look at this, we need a user image view, a username label, a main image view, because all of that content is dynamic and we need to configure it. And the stuff down here is actually static. So these three buttons, and actually the exception to that is the number of likes. So we actually need 4 outlets, of which there are 2 labels and 2 image views. So let's add those. So we're going to do an IB outlet. It's going to be a var. We're going to first do user image view, say UI image view, And let's copy and paste that a few times. The next one is going to be post image view, username label, and likes label. Don't forget to update this to be UI label for both of these. Let's create another function down here, which is the function we're going to pass some objects into to configure this cell. So I'm going to call the function configure with model, and we're going to create a model struct in just a second, and we're going to call it Instagram post. So let's go create this Instagram post struct in our Viewcontroller so that error goes away. So an Instagram post is going to be a struct called Instagram post, and it's going to have a couple properties on it. So we're going to say it has a number of likes, which is an integer. It's going to have a username, which is a string. It'll have a user image name. Now, generally, the user image and the actual image would come from like a remote URL. But because we're going to be dragging these images into our project for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to supply a string, which will be the name of the file. So the last one that we want is main image name. Let's actually call this post image name because main is kind of vague and arbitrary. So that's our Instagram object to configure the cell with. And if we hit Command B, the error should go away like so. And what we want to do is we want to say self.LikeLabel.text equals model.LikeCount likes. So basically, we're going to append that to the string. We're going to say self.usernameLabel.text equals model.username. Self.userImageView.image equals an image with a name, and the name is going to be model.userImageName. Let's copy and paste this line for the post image itself as well. So we're going to say self.postImageView.image is model.postImageName. So hit Command B, and your project will still be compiling. Let's head to the Viewcontroller and register this cell to the table, and then we're going to set up the cell, and that'll actually wrap this up. So before we assign this, let's say table.register, and we want to register a nib for cell reuse identifier. So the nib is going to be post tableviewcell.nib. And if you recall, we added this nib function, and this is why I like adding it, because it just makes our implementation in the controller simpler. And the reuse identifier is again going to be this cell, this cell dot identifier. And also, if you recall, we added this identifier property, which makes, once again, implementation easier. So let's come back here. Let's see, what else do we need to do? We need to dequeue a cell here, which is of the proper new custom cell type we created. So we're going to say dequeue reusable cell with an identifier for index path as this kind of cell. And we're going to say cell.configure with models, and let's spell this correctly, indexpath.row. Now don't fret, we haven't created models yet. We're going to create this in a second. Let's see, I actually did create an array up here and I called it posts. Let's call this models, and it's going to be Instagram post. This is a struct we created down below if you don't recall. And here, let's update this to be models.count. Hit Command B, and we should still be running, or rather building. So let's go to our actual cell.xib file and set up our cell's content, or the outlet user interface elements rather. So let's expand this and let's see what we need. So first things first, we need to add some holder views just to apply constraints in a more clean way. So I like to grab a couple UI views. So first we're going to grab a UI view and drop it in, and we're going to apply some constraints to this. I'm going to apply, for the purposes of this, we're going to do 0, 0, 0, and the height of this container is going to be approximately 80. And this is where our header image for the user image and the username label is going to go. So let's set a background color to this. I just like doing that as I'm applying constraints to make sure things are positioned correctly. So that's what that's looking like. Let's also add another UI view for the bottom container that we're going to need. And this bottom container holds our 3 action buttons. And then below it, we also need space to hold the label. So let's click on this and add some constraints here. We want this to be 0, 0, 0 from the bottom. And the height is going to be, let's say, 110. So the label height is going to be half of that, so 55, and the image height will be 55. And let's also set a background color to this so we can see it. And in the middle of this, let's put a UI image view in, which is going to be our actual post's image. And we're going to set it to be 0, 0, 0, 0. So it'll touch all the corners of our other 2 container views. Now let's add in an image view here for the person's profile picture and a label. So let's come up here and grab a image view, drag it on in, and make sure it's sub of this container view, like so. So we have this view here. Let's rename this to top container view, and this one to bottom container view. To rename a view, you can just hit enter on it and it'll let you edit it. So it's a good idea to name these appropriately because it turns into a major hassle down the road once you have tons of views. But let's actually grab our image view and let's make it a little smaller. We're going to apply constraints to this in a second, but let's just make it at least fit into the container. So we're going to say constraints. This is going to be 0 from the top, 0 from the left, and 0 from the bottom. And the width is going to be 80. If you recall, the container's height is 80. So it'll give us a square image. Hit enter, and it'll apply those constraints. And let's see, it looks a little smushed, and we'll figure out why in a second. But let's also add in our UI label for the username label. Drag that on in. And this is going to be simpler in terms of constraints. It'll be 0, 5, 0, and 0, like so. Let's start connecting some of our outlets. So let's right click this. And if we come on over here, we'll see we have a user image view, and we want to connect this to this. We also want to connect the username label to the label up here. We want to connect the post image view to this guy. And the last one we have left over there is our like label, which we're going to connect in just a sec. So I would add another container view in this container view. And the reason I would do that is because the buttons for liking, commenting, and sending are going to go in here. So let's say this is going to be 0 from the top, left, and right. And the height is 55, which is half the height of this cell, or rather this container. Now it looks a little off, which leads me to believe there aren't proper constraints set. But let's add in our label and see what we get when we run the app. And we can always come back and adjust constraints as needed. So put in that label, make sure it's in the bottom container view and not in the inner view. We're going to call that button view. And we're going to want to set some constraints to this as well. Let's make it 0, 0, 0, and 0, like that. And we can actually even double click in here. Let's actually expand the cell a little bit. And let's actually, it looks like the label is smushed. So let's grab this bottom container view and let's increase its height by coming to this ruler where we can edit the existing constraints. And we should have a height set on this somewhere. Let's see, vertical, leading, trailing, trailing. Let's see, we got a height here of 110. Let's update this to be 140. There we go. So this gives us a little more room down here for the label. Let's click on here and just put in some default text. We'll just say 12 likes. Let's also come up here, double click this and say, I don't know, username at Instagram. Let's also click on the top container view and increase its height, because what I believe has happened up here in terms of this being smushed is that the constraints are using insets, hence they're not aligning properly. So let's increase the height of this, which I think was 80 that we set it to somewhere. Let's increase this to be 120. Looking a little better. And we need to bring in some of the images that we dragged out from our browser into the app. So we have a couple images. The first one is this head for our person, their profile picture. The next one is this Instagram logo for our navigation bar. And then we've got 3 just like random pictures for our post. So we're gonna actually show this in our feed. So let's come on over here and open up the assets and right click, new image set, and we're gonna call the first one head. The next one is gonna be post_1, post_2, and _3. For the head, let's drag in the user image head. For the post 1, 2, 3, we can just drag in any of these posts. Order is kind of irrelevant for this matter. Drag in the second one. For this one, let's drag in the third one. And let's go back to our cell. And let's click on this image and let's assign the head image like so. And let's see, what do we got going on? Let's spell head correctly and it'll actually show up. Now you can notice that we have square corners and we want these to be circles. So what we can do actually is apply a corner radius, which is how we get the rounded corners. So come up here, hit this tab, and we're gonna add our custom property, which is a corner radius. It'll be a number, and if my math is correct, we want this to be 40, and it's not going to reflect here, but basically we want half of the square's width or half of the height, which in this case is the same because it's a square, and that'll round off the corners so this image appears as a circle. So let's see, I believe we've connected all of our outlets. Looks like we're missing the like label, so let's connect that to this label down here. And something we forgot to do is actually put this cell identifier from the code in our actual cell's nib. So come in here, click on the cell, click on the attributes inspector, and paste that identifier in here. If you hit Command B, your app should still be building, hopefully. Let's go back to our Viewcontroller, and let's see, we want to be configuring the cell, which we are. Let's create a couple of these models and put them in here, and let's run our app and see what we get. So we're gonna say append. We want to append a new Instagram post. So let's create an Instagram post. And number of likes, let's say 200. Username is going to be, I don't know, let's say Zuck. I think that's Mark Zuckerberg's handle, maybe. User image name is just going to be head for all of them. And post image name is going to be post1. Let's copy and paste this a couple times. And let's say this is John and Jenny. Let's update the post image name, and let's hit Command R and see what happens. Fingers crossed I didn't forget anything and it doesn't crash. So, okay, so we got something going on. So it looks like we have our person's name up here, but we still have this ugly background. Our sizing looks like completely off for some reason because these cells are massively tall. But we do have our things showing up. And by things, I mean the image and the username and the number of likes. So to solve the problem of the height being completely incorrect, we can override another table view function. And this function is height for row at index path. And this is a whole function, table view, UI table view height for row, and we can return a float of how tall we want the table view cell to be. So if you recall, the top container is, I believe, 120 points, and the bottom container in the cell, i.e. this, and this bottom container, I believe is 140. So we can say we want to return 120 plus 140 plus view.frame.size.width. And the reason we're returning this added on to both of these is because the size of the image should be exactly the width of the screen because we're dealing with square images. So hit Command R and let's see what we get. So if you look at that, we're doing much better. It looks a lot better. Our circle looks good. Our image looks good. Now we just need to bring in the like button, comment, and the other button, get rid of these super ugly container colors and rerun it. So let's come back to our storyboard. Let's select this container. I like to do it from the left side in this hierarchy pane because we have other elements overlaying it. It's tough to select over here. And let's select the background color and give it a clear background color. Let's do the same thing for the container down here, but before we do that, let's make this white container some other color because we're going to put the buttons in there. So let's take this enclosing container, which is this bottom container, and make that clear as well. Now in here, we want to bring in a couple buttons. So the first one we're going to do is a like button, then a comment button, and then a share button. So we're gonna drag on in a button like so. I could have swore I was able to grab it and bring it on in, but apparently not. So let's try that one more time. Let's drag a UI button in like that, and we get a button right there. Now it's got blue text on blue background, so let's come over here and get rid of the title for it, and we're gonna put a image on it. So let's see. We're gonna say custom, and button is gonna go away. There should be an image here. Let's see if like exists, or heart actually, that's what we want. So we're gonna apply a heart to it. Now it's still blue, so we wanna change this to be black. So text color is irrelevant. I believe what we want is the tint color, which is somewhere in here. So we're gonna pick a black color, and now we can actually see our heart. It's a bit small, but we're gonna apply constraints to it as well. Let's select it, come down here, and apply this 0, 0, 0, and I guess let's make the width 80. And we get this. Let's bump up this font size. I think the font size will do us justice for increasing the size, even though it's an image. I might be mistaken, but Okay, so it looks like the sizing on this is a little wonky too. Let's decrease the width over here, hit the ruler, drag down, and let's change this width to be like 40. See how 40 looks. So 40 looks a little better. So let's just copy and paste this once over here and one more time. And hit the second one. We want to change this image to be the comment icon. So I don't think Apple has a stock comment photo. At least I don't think they do. They have a command. I think what we want is message. So these icons are the new icons that are introduced in iOS 13 that are built in stock. So those are the ones I'm using. You can certainly use your own images. For the third one, we want a message icon, or share rather. Let's use this one, which is action. So let's apply some constraints to each of these as well. Get rid of the blue background and see what we get in the simulator. So let's select this. 0, 0, 0. Width is going to be 40. Like so. Select this one. And come down here and let's hit this again. Keep hitting the wrong one. 0, 0, 0. And width is going to be 40. Hit this blue container and let's get rid of its background color. Hit Command R to build and run, and let's see what we get. So we now have Instagram up here. We have the username. Text is a bit small. We could bump the size in a second. The main image. We get our 3 icons, our likes. And yeah, this is a very basic kind of implementation of how Instagram's feed is built. So obviously we can sit here and polish up this cell and how these spacing constraints are for hours on end. And if you wanted to look as polished as Instagram, that's what you kind of have to do. But that's kind of a run through of how to set this up. Let's bump the size of this username label before we wrap up the video. And I will run it one more time. Let's change the font of this to be a little bolder. And let's definitely bump the size up a couple points. Hit Command R. Run it one more time. And let's see what we get. So yeah, there you have it. That's how you can build a Instagram style feed for your iOS app. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next video.